Hello, it's time for Combat Patrol Carnage. It's a fresh week, so that means a fresh issue, and we're on issue 36. So this brings us the final part of our Havocs. So yeah, we get to build up the remaining 2 guys of our heavy weapons squad, and then we can start looking at the rest of the actual issue. So the issue itself has all the paint guide for these models, so we'll be painting up one of these guys on camera. I'll probably be painting the champion as he's a more open pose, and it'll be a lot easier for the majority of the paint guide. Yeah, full paint guide for our models, getting up to the same standard as our previous Chaos Space Marines. We look at the different engines and war machines of the Chaos Legions, including some of the characters that will lead these forces. We look at the Chaos God Tzeentch. We have the Return to Bonds of Honor Part 9 as the Silver Templars start to take down a Chaos force. Then we continue our core rules look through as we cover data sheets before our latest scenario, Big Guns Never Tire, in which the Havocs are facing off against a horde of Tyranids as they are trying to escape. Well, the Tyranids anyway. They're trying to get out of the way of the Chaos Space Marines, who are making things a little harder for them to claim the biomass they need. So this usually came with a single sprue, and it's this one. We got 2 guys. We got a missile launcher, a las cannon, and a second autocannon, plus a second heavy bolter. So if you want to, you can build this squad up as pretty much anti-tank with 2 las cannons and 2 missile launchers, or anti-infantry with the heavy bolters, autocannons, and the rotary cannon. Sadly, we only get one of the rotary cannon, but it is what it is. It's still a pretty cool kit. So, nice little bits of additional details to add to our models, and we'll get the squad ready for the game. We also get our bases of this issue, 5 40mm bases, as these guys are pretty chunky models, plus it helps identify them against the Chaos Legionaries. So before we hit the table and get our paints out, don't forget to, of course, do all the usual. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and drop me a comment down below. Love hearing back from you guys. It goes a massive way to helping out this channel. Finally then, Combat Patrol Carnage is proudly sponsored by warbay.shop, your one-stop supply for all your hobby needs. They stock everything you need, from getting started with models and paints, to expanding your gaming equipment and your gaming accessories as well. And of course, decorating your bags and houses with awesome Warhammer art. Check out their link in the video description to their website, or you can head down to their store to check out everything they have in person. And who knows, you might find your next hobby project at a bit of a discount. Right, shake your paints and we'll head to the table and paint our Havocs. So here we are with issue 36 for our first look. So we got our bases as usual for our models, 5 40mm bases. So these guys will really stand out against the rest of the models in our Chaos Combat Patrol. Well, except the Terminators when we get those. But yeah, here we have the remaining frame, so we can finally put our Chaos Havocs together. So we get a heavy bolter, we get a autocannon there, we get a missile launcher as well, and finally our second las cannon. So yeah, tons of shoulder pads to add little additional details to our models. And each of the models is nicely unique as well. Plus, we've got all these awesome heads with extra scopes and pipes and stuff, which is really cool. So yeah, there's the underside, just so you guys can see what it looks like. And there we have it. Right, so we'll go into the paint guide first, and then we'll bring in our desk, and we'll actually get these guys painted. So into the magazine we go, and we have our full contents here. So we have our paint guide for the Havocs, we read all about the engines of the damned, as well as the Chaos God Tzeentch, and we read a new part to the Bonds of Honor short story. Finally, we look at data sheets with our core rules pages, and then we have our latest scenario, Big Guns Never Tire, where our Havocs are facing a stampede of escaping Tyranids. So into our paint guide we go. So how to paint Havocs. Follow this guide to paint your unit of Havocs. If you have built these models recently, wait until the glue is fully dry before you begin. Then gather your paints and set up your painting station in a well-lit area. Read the article in full before you begin, and make sure you take breaks whenever you need to. So the first thing to do is to get an undercoat of Abaddon Black, 3 layers all over our models. Then we're picking out all the silver details, so there's going to be quite a lot on these guys, but we've got things like chains, chainmail, cables on the backpacks. We've got the majority of the guns, so paint the entirety of the guns silver. It will help when the gold goes over the top later. You've got little bits of breakages in these soft pipes here as well to pick out. There's cables around the heads as well. Speaking of attribute armor, that's our next color. So we're picking out all of our gold trim. So on the power armor, on the weapons, pick all of those out with 2 to 3 coats, especially over the black of attribute armor. You might need only the one over the silver though. Moving on, we can change our paint water and we start adding our matte colors. So Mephiston red, first off, for the top knot as well as the bit of the holding the ponytail up. The wrappings there, leather wrappings. We got lenses on all of our Havocs. Then moving over to Wraith Bones, so we got some leering skull faces. We got teeth and skulls over various models. We got the flesh on our champion's face to pick out. Corax white to pick out the central banding on all of our missiles. Painting the entirety of the missiles. Then we're picking out the banding in black. Rakar flesh is used on all of those soft fleshy tubes. Abaddon black to pick out the strip on the missile launchers there. Then we're moving over to our shades. So starting things off with Nuln oil over all of our silver and red and white details. So pick that out with a good coat of Nuln oil. Just being careful around your other areas on the likes of your weapons. So any trim on your weapons, being careful around those. Agrax Earthshade is used on all of our skulls and demonic faces, as well as the fleshy tubes. Radical Flesh Shade then is our final shade, so this is used on the Aspiring Champion's face, as well as all of the gold trim on our models. And there we have our finished squad. We've got nice different angles of each of the models, so we can check and make sure we haven't missed any bits. So there we go. Right, we'll bring in the paint desk and we can start painting our Aspiring Champion. So here we have our Aspiring Champion for our Havoc squad, base coated with 3 layers of Abaddon Black. And now we can start applying all the rest of the colours. So we start things off in the paint guide using our metallics. So let's kick things off with Lead Belcher, which is for all of the silver details, of which there is quite a fair bit. So let's get some paint ready on a palette. We'll use our medium base brush, as some of the areas are large, others are small, and this will cover all of them quite nicely. So once we've got the paint thinned down quite nicely, give our brush a quick clean. And then on to our model. So we got the loincloth and all the chains hanging off his belt. I'll pick those out with Lead Belcher. Don't worry about getting this over areas that will be gold, as it will actually help to make the gold go on a lot easier later on. We got all of the chainsword, so from top to tip, bottom to tip even. Then we got his plasma gun here. So getting the grip handle there, getting the whole of the gun. Then we've got small details around the back. So we've got these vents here, cables, and these small exhausts at the very bottom. There we go, with all that silver detail picked out. I've even got the little bits of pipe that's visible through the fleshy tubes around his chest. There we got all the backpack detail done nicely as well, and the back of the loincloth, and the other side of the chainsword. So now all we've got to do is start working on all of that gold detail. So Retributor armor is what we need. And we're probably going to have to do 2 layers of this, as it doesn't cover quite well over the black. But as usual, we'll get some ready on our palette, thin it down a couple of drops of water, and we'll take our time. Some of the larger panels we can work with our medium base brush, but we'll probably go to the smaller layer brush to help with those thinner panels. So wash the brush off again. Load up and we're ready. So we'll look at the backpack first, because we've got quite a lot of gold here. So a lot of trim on the backpack here. This whole circle piece is gold as well. I reckon later we'll be painting that as a nice energy effect. We've got little bits of trim around these bottom parts of the vent backpack as well. Any mistakes we can tidy up with some Abaddon black later on. And moving around, we've got loads of armor panels across the model that have gold trim. So legs, hip guards, gauntlets, shoulder pads. I made a mistake there, we'll cover that up later on. We can always be rough at this early stage of painting. So just take your time working your way around the entirety of the model. There we go, we got all the gold and silver down on our aspiring champion. As you can see, I've been quite messy with this guy, but that's fine. We've got a tidy up stage at the end before we do the wash. So we've got our Abaddon black ready. But now with fresh water, we can move on to our matte colours, and our first one is Mephiston red. So this colour is only for a few small details. We've got the top knot on our champion, and don't forget to get all the eyes and lenses on the Havocs. So we can use our small layer brush, as we ain't got much of an area to cover. And we'll probably want a couple of layers over the black So we want to get the top knot, including the straps holding it up. So there we go, we'll let that dry, we'll do a second layer, and we can move on to our next colour. So with the red dry majority, just got a few bits there in the very recesses to dry, we are ready to move on to our next colour, and our next colour is Wraithbone. And we got quite a few areas of cover. So we've got his skin on this model, the flesh of the champion. Then we got various teeth and skulls across the models. So these will vary from model to model. Some might have more than others, some might not have any at all. But just take your time going around each of the models to check what bits are where. Any uncertainties, just check the paint guide's gallery at the back of the paint guide, and that should tell you anything. So this guy, we got a couple of teeth coming out on his shoulder pad here. There's the teeth coming out of the vent here. We got the skull on the front of his chest and the one on his leg. And of course we've got his skin to pick out as well. And again, we'll need a couple of layers over the black base coat. Just wait for your first to dry, and you can come back in with a second afterwards. With our Wraithbone done, our aspiring champion is starting to look a little more filled in. So the next colour in the paint guide would be Corax White, but the only guy who actually needs it is our missile launcher guy, just to pick out the main body of the missiles. So we can skip that and move on to Rakarth Flesh, which is going to be used for all of the fleshy tubes. So on this guy we got the 4 that are sort of crisscrossing his chest, and we got some on the plasma gun. That's pretty much it, but on the others there's quite a few, including pretty much the entirety of their heads seem to be given over to fleshy cables to help with targeting, etc. So just take your time picking out each of those cables. Being careful, of course, around areas you've already finished. So with the Rakarth Flesh ready, we can start picking out all of these fleshy tubes. So don't worry about the areas we've already painted silver. I'm going to have to go back in and do some gold areas that I found missed. So I'll repick those out with some silver. But mainly you want to get a nice solid coat of Rakarth Flesh all over the fleshy tubes. On the plasma gun, we got one at the front and one at the back here. And the one on the front goes all the way around to the other side. So be sure to get that So there we go, the rack our flesh down. I'm off to tidy this guy up with some Abaddon Black and any missed colours that I kind of missed. I got a few bits of gold that I've missed on some of the trim, especially on the shoulder pad there. Yeah, going back over a few colours, and then I'll be hitting this guy with the washes. So I'll be right back after a quick tidy up. There we go, with that tidy up done, Aspiring Champion is good and ready for the battlefield. So next we can move on to our wash stage, and our first colour is Null Oil. So this is going to be for all of our silver as well as our red details. So we'll give the paint a shake, get a puddle of this on our palette, and then we can start applying to our model. So areas to colour, or cover even, are the chains and chainmail. The entirety of the chainsword, just being careful around that gold. We got his top knot to pick out as well, being careful around the flesh. So start at the bottom of the top knot and draw it up and around to the tips of the hair. Then we got the majority of the plasma gun here as well. All these vents and cables, and the back of the loincloth. While the black is drying, we can do the areas that aren't going to have a black wash, and that's going to be the areas that need a brown wash. So this is for all the teeth, claws, the skulls, and the flesh tubes as well around the model. So again, we'll get a small puddle of this onto our palette. And we got these skulls here on the chest and knee. Any of the little teeth and claws around the model. And the fleshy tubes as well. And with our shades now dry, we got one final colour to add, and it's going to be Reichlin Flesh Shade over that Retributor armour and the face there as well. Give it a good shake, get ourselves a puddle on our palette to draw from. Won't need too much, but we do have a lot of areas to cover. So once we're not too overloaded, in fact, let's clean our brush off and get again. So not too overloaded, we can apply this to the flesh of the champion's face, all the gold trim, don't worry about getting it on the black armour. It won't be very noticeable, but it will help add a little bit of definition. So areas like the backpack here, we can pretty much paint all over, avoiding the silver we've already done. And just be careful putting on the little details like the trim. on the gun and chainsword. There we go, there's our aspiring champion, all shaded, just letting him dry. He's ready to join his squad and cause absolute havoc for the Imperium. So that's it for this video and our paint guide. All what's left to do now is move over to our lore articles. So we got a look at some of the Chaos vehicles as well as the Chaos God Tzeentch. And then we get to try these guys out after we read a couple of more pages of the core rules. So all that's left for me to do is to say thank you all very much for watching, and I'll see you next time on more Combat Patrol Carnage. Goodbye.